Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great day. So, it's been a while since I made one of these. Nothing too serious, just, life and other stuff getting in the way. I thought since with Slave to Darkness getting their new Battletome, I thought I'd jump in here. I'll probably also make up some videos for Stormcast and Skaven too, but I'll get to those later. So anyway, I'm just going to want to just go over just briefly the new updates to the battle traits, enhancements, and also just a broad overview of the Warscrolls themselves. Just see what's changed, what stays the same, what's gotten good, what's gotten better. As I probably prefaced before, I'm not going to go over individual Warscrolls because with a book as big as Slaves of Darkness, that's just not. I just find that's just going to take too long. I don't want to make like a 3-4 hour video going into minute detail. At this point, it's easy enough to find the Warscrolls online if you don't have the book or the Warscroll cards. So it's probably better just to look there. But I will give a broad overview of the Warscroll, so don't worry about that. Well, hello, Slaves to Darkness, my old friend. You are now in 4th edition, and my word, we missed you. So, yeah, the new book for Slaves to Darkness. Now, I will preface this. I have not actually played them in the 4th edition currently, but I have definitely seen some games with them that have come out recently from, like, online and also from some associates. So I definitely think I have an idea of how they're playing and what exactly has been changed with them. Just from what I can definitely tell, the rules haven't really been severely changed, but they're definitely more in line with how 4th edition's playing. I'll tell you right now, the core rules have definitely been streamlined. I will admit that is for better or for worse. When we're going to get to that in a minute. Now I will preface that though, however, they're not as changed as I was expecting, because I'm going to be honest here, from when we got the index cards, and not the index cards, but the index army that came out when 4th edition dropped, when I noticed it wasn't severely different from what it was back in, like, somewhat towards the end of 3rd edition, I kind of assumed that was kind of like implying that the 4th edition book was going to be a major change up to what we had before. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of changes, but they're not as drastic as I was expecting. Like, I was expecting Slaves of Darkness to just, for example, just do away with all the randomness, just lean more heavily into the undivided aspect of it, because I kind of thought with my theory from 3rd edition is that with all the god-aligned armies becoming more separate from each other and trying to separate themselves from Slaves of Darkness more and more, which we kind of saw from the tail end of 3rd edition, I thought the idea is that those armies are now going to be more their own thing, and Slaves of Darkness was going to become more undivided to differentiate this army from the mono-god armies. That actually kind of didn't happen. I was honestly kind of wrong on that. Now, I'm not saying undivided isn't a thing, but they kind of did the opposite, which we'll get to in a minute. And again, I feel this is some pros and cons to that as well. So let's get started on some of those. Okay, so let's get started. Battle traits. These, in my opinion, are probably one of the biggest change-ups in the book. Probably, maybe not the biggest change-up, which we'll get to next, but they're a close second. So, Eye of the Gods. Eye of the Gods has been very heavily reworked. Biggest thing that we've probably got from it is that it is now a lot more restrictive on what it is. Well, that's not true. It's more restrictive in one way, and it's a lot less restrictive in another way. And by that I mean is that you now basically have to pick during deployment one non-unique hero, either Warrior of Chaos or Dark Oath hero with that keyword, and you only get one. So that to me right there was probably the biggest thing that I didn't like about this change-up. In that, see, in the old one, Eye of the Gods applied basically to everything in your army, like, because it worked on a table that you rolled on, like, once you met certain conditions, you could get get your Eye of the Gods off and get certain abilities, or maybe become a Demon Prince. However, with this new change up now you have to pick one hero, and that's your only hero throughout the whole game that even has a chance of getting your Dark Apotheosis off. So that's much more restrictive. Now, what is less restrictive, however, I feel I think it's technically now easier to get to rack up the points to get your buffs, because you now only have to just trigger a fight ability, or you just have to be contesting an objective outside your friendly territory with that hero, mind you. Now, the big thing I actually do like is that it does specify fight ability. So obviously that means, if they're engaged in combat, whether or not they kill or be killed, they just automatically get D3 points. And I do like that it specified that. So basically it means you don't have to kill another unit. It just has to use a fight ability. So you just have to just be locked in combat, I feel, to just get that off. And another thing I think that now I don't think there's a way to do it because if there is, I missed it. Just using a fight ability, because there are other ways in the game with other armies to use fight abilities without being in combat. So if that ever comes to Slaves of Darkness, that could be a way to points farm. Probably not, though, because I know the developers probably don't want to put cheese in the book, but it's just something to think about. Obviously the other one, contesting objective, is nice, but again, that's a lot more risky, especially if you're using a foot hero, because you're putting them out into danger. So the whole point of the reason you do this is to basically trigger a dark apotheosis. So if you get 8 or more points with this hero, you essentially then get the option of one of two abilities. Either you heal back all your wounds suffered and just get a 5+ ward for the rest of the battle, not bad, or you become a Demon Prince and keep all alignments and any enhancements that came with it, and if it was your general, it becomes your general. Now this I think is really cool, because this is one of those few instances where we technically still have summoning. By that I mean is now this theory goes out the window depending on how much the points are, but usually GW has basically been getting rid of summoning on free stuff in the game. And just focusing more on recursion of bringing stuff back. So this might just be one of those rare cases where you could get a more valuable unit in terms of points replacing an older one. Even though technically you are losing something regardless. So it's not as bad as, just summoning on demons, but still, not nothing. Now right there, that's another thing I don't particularly like about this, because the old one had a whole plethora of different abilities you could have gotten with through your Eye of the Gods ability. Now here you only get 2 options, and on top of this too, this is all the other big problem is it's only on the one hero that you picked at the beginning of the game. So that means if you lose him, you just can't get this off at all. And the problem I have with that is you're basically giving him a very bad case of bullseye syndrome. Like, any savvy opponent that knows your rules in even broad terms will know that if they don't want an extra Demon Prince on the table, they just need to snipe you out. So let's say if you chose a hero and he already had a big bullseye on his head because maybe he's your only wizard, or maybe he's your main hero hammer guy. Well, now that if he knows that he's also could just pop into a Demon Prince at any moment, well, now every gun, bow, and spell on the table is going to be gunning for him the second he drops. So be prepared for that. So in this regard here, I'm not the biggest fan of this, and I definitely will say, more so than any other previous edition, don't rely on your Eye of the Gods or your Dark Apotheosis, because there's a very good chance that you're going to lose your hero long before any of this ever gets popped off. So if it goes off, great, but please don't try to base any kind of like grand strategy about getting a Demon Prince on the table. This is a bonus. This is not a main attraction. Now, moving on, the other big part of the battle traits of this army goes in regards to how marks work, in that they're gone now. But seriously, no, they're still here, but they're definitely changed up. So this is probably, in my opinion, this is probably the other big change up to the book, and it's that we technically don't get the old keyword anymore. So basically, how anyone who ever played Slaves to Darkness knows, they had an ability where you could basically give a significant amount of the units a keyword, like, you know, Nurgle, Slaanesh, blah blah blah, and it gave them certain abilities, but it also allowed them to be used in mono god Pacific armies, like the other books, like, you know, Hedon Knights of Slaanesh or Madkin of Nurgle. That's gone now, and it's been replaced with essentially another keyword where you basically pledge to a god, like pledge to Khorne, pledge to Tzeentch, pledge to Nurgle, pledge to Slaanesh, blah blah blah. But this has the added effect of it essentially gives your units specific abilities, and it also means that you can no longer cross-pollinate your units into other armies now. Yes, that is unfortunately gone because they no longer get the keywords that just allow them to be taken in other armies. Now that was already on its way out, even as late as 3rd edition. This is just basically the final nail in the coffin. So yeah, sorry guys, if you want to like include you know, a big 20 block of like Chaos Warriors in your Blades of Khorne army, well, I'm sorry, you're kind of out of luck. You're probably gonna have to make do with whatever regiments of renown you ever get. So yeah, that's just what it is. So anyway, so what does this do in this army? Well, essentially, like I said, you basically you get to pledge a unit once per turn in your hero phase. And by that I mean is this is the major change up I was talking about. I wasn't just meaning change in wording. See, before, for people who might not know, you chose the beginning of the game what all your units' marks were going to be. Like, okay, so this cavalry was going to be Slaanesh, this army was going to be Khorne, this army was going to be Tzeentch. Well, no, now you only get to pick one at a time. So this is both good and bad in certain ways. So it's bad in that you can't really you can't just give all your units marks right away. You have to do it one at a time, barring one exception way of doing it. But I'll get to that in a minute. However, this is also can be a good thing in that it allows you a certain amount of flexibility. So, for example, maybe you're halfway through a game and you're realizing that, oh, geez, this unit is in a precarious position. I need more speed. Oh, but wait, I gave it Khorne. Oh, well, I guess I'm out of luck. Well, that was before. Now, if it needs more speed, well, I can just pledge it to Slaanesh in the middle of the game. So that allows a good certain amount of flexibility in that regard. Having said that, it can also lead to issues too, because remember, you can only do this one at a time in your hero phase. So there's a very good chance a whole game could go by, and the units that you really wanted to put your pledges on, they might just die before they ever get a chance to. So you need to be prepared for that. So just be cognizant of the fact is that there's a lot of your units might never actually get a mark, you know, even when you really could have needed them. So anyway, and just to go over what they are, they're pretty much the same as what they were in the previous book. Each one gets a specific ability depending on who you choose. So Pledge to Khorne gives you +1 attacks to your melee weapons. Perfectly fine. I see this one getting probably used a lot. That's probably going to be on the blobs of like, you know, Chaos Warriors and Chosen. Just anything that really wants to hit in combat, that's going to be it. Nurgle is about what you expected. It gives you a ward of 6+, and if you already had one, you get a 5+. Again, that is basically going to be the Tar Pit auto tag right there. The Pledge to Tzeentch is a little strange. Essentially what it does is it allows you to pick a unit in the movement phase, and you roll 2d6 and essentially teleport it not that many inches, but you pick a point within that many inches of the unit, and you place it within 6 inches of that and 9 more of the enemy. So basically, it's kind of like a short-range teleport. Now I have a theory why this one they did this. And I'll explain more in detail, but later. But the main reason I feel is that because they got rid of two of the more maybe more, not widely used, but two of the flying options in the book, because we lost the mana cores. I feel like maybe this was an attempt to give them a little more mobility. Because I also feel that was also a thing in the previous books where Slaves of Darkness could have issues with like getting locked up or having its units being like trapped between two large like blobs of infantry. So maybe this was an attempt to just give them a little more like flexibility with movement because they don't really have a ton of deep striking. Again, though, it's hard to tell. That's just my theory. And also this is the only one that can only be done once per turn. Like so you can't just pick every single Pledge to Tzeentch unit and then just teleport them everywhere. No, it's only one. It's only one per turn. And the final one is Pledges to Lanesh, and it essentially gives you +1 to your dice roll when making charge rolls to a maximum of 3. And if you're thinking, yes, this is probably going to be a cavalry auto take for a lot of units, because and also finally, I think they finally just gave that to Slanesh, because I think I even was saying as far back as 3rd edition, like that whole like, oh, +1 to charge, +1 to run, like, okay, great, but you're not competing with like +1 to wound or -1 to wound that the other ones had. No, I was just saying, here's how you fix it. Just make it a 3d6 charge. And they did it. So I guess they got my letter. Thank you, GW. So yeah, overall, I would say that my opinion. I know some people might disagree with me, but I actually think these abilities are actually better than the old marks. At least overall, anyway. I just feel that they're just a lot more cleaner. They'll have more benefits. There's more flexibility. Not quite sure yet on the Tzeentch one, because I feel like there's a lot more limitations to it, and there's a lot more randomness, because again, you have to roll 2d6. So what happens if I roll 2 1s and do I just get to teleport like 2 inches, like with like between 2 and 8 inches somewhere? Like I know it's within 6 inches of the mark, but still, that's not really dependable. I just kind of feel like I'd rather have like a 3d6 charge or a +1 attack, and Nurgle is probably a distant 3rd, because depending on the unit, a ward of 6+ might not do anything, but then again, on some tar pit units that could be a different story. So that I don't know. Some play testing is probably needed. Now, just also to include under battle trees as well, even though technically these are actually more unique enhancements, because of the fact that they're unique, I'm going to include them under battle traits more than enhancements. But also because it also leads directly into something I said earlier regarding the pledges. So basically, the ensorcelled banners, as you probably remember, are pretty much the same as they were from last edition. But one of the big things with them now is that for one thing, it only lasts now while you have the icon. Like it's specific to a model now. So if you lose, you only get one. Also, you only get one per unit. So if you lose your icon bearer, then it's just gone. Another big thing is it can only be given to units that actually have icons. So I'm so sorry, Varangard players, you can't cheese it with like a corn pledge and also a corn banner now. That's just, yeah. So that means like basically like Chaos Warriors, Chaos Cavalry, stuff like that. So whatever. And a big other thing is because also we're not really getting a lot of ways to like get additional enhancements. You can only get one banner per army, it appears, but it's okay because I think you still get quite a bit of stuff for it. So big thing you get for it is that it's a beginning of game automatic pledge. So as I mentioned before, you have to pledge a unit during your hero page, and only one per turn. But if you give a unit an icon, depending on which one you give them, that automatically pledges them to that particular god, unless you got the undivided one. So that can be pretty good too, because again, if you have a unit, like I said before, one of the big problems with the pledge system is that your unit could be killed before it gets a chance to get its pledge off. So this is basically a way to just give an auto pledge at the beginning of the game without having to go through all that. Now that alone I think is okay, but again, as with the previous book, they also give you a specific ability depending on what you get. So one of the big things you get with this is that you get there with the generic one. So before I also do, I want to preface it as well. One other thing that I forgot, I didn't want to mention the other one, but I'll mention it here. It appears that undivided is no longer a mark. Yeah, no, you just undivided just really, once again, is not as much a thing as it was before. They seem to just be, again, wanting to focus on the mono god stuff. Because remember when I was saying earlier about how I thought Slaves of Darkness would become more like undivided to differentiate them? No, actually, from what we're getting, it's from what it's looking like, they're becoming more mono god specific again. Like, not to the extent that they're like, you know, slaves to, like, you know, Blades of Corn or Hedonites, but they're putting much more emphasis on pledging to a particular god rather than being undivided. Like my theory, and also just by the looks of it, they seem to be treating undivided as just not having a pledge. But the only real benefit of being undivided, however, is just one particular banner, which I'm going to bring up here. So I just don't really see any benefit to not being pledged. So yeah, so I don't know. I feel GW should really, in my opinion, I feel GW should give Undivided more of a chance, because I always felt like that was a thing that kind of differentiated them from 40K, where it's all gods all the time. You know, Undivided just didn't get as much of a say. Sorry, and that was one thing that I thought Age of Sigmar was doing well, was that giving Undivided more of an identity. And once again, they're kind of stripping that back again. Like, I don't know. I think they should give Undivided more time to shine. But anyway, rant over. Okay, so the one thing that you get if you're Undivided is that you get no, well, one, you get no pledge. Like, this just doesn't pledge you to a god. Again, it's technically Undivided. But it makes it so that enemy units can't use commands while they're in combat with this unit. So that's okay, I guess, yeah. You know, there are some good command abilities out there that you would probably want to shut down. However, the fact that it has to be in combat is a little bit of a preference I don't like. But you know, it could be good for like a bodyguard unit, you know, to protect saving your your general or whatever from like a dangerous command ability going off. So that's not nothing. Now as for the god specific ones, there's the one called the Banner of Rage. That's that automatically pledges you to Khorne, and in addition to whatever you get from pledging to Khorne, you add one to your wound rolls for a combat attacks. Perfectly reasonable to me. Now, the Banner of Screaming Flesh, however, that one it pledges you to Slaanesh. This one in particular, it basically does exactly what the old one did, in that if you charge this turn, you just add one to the attacks characteristics of melee weapons. So again, this is just going with the theme that Slaanesh, that honestly GW has pretty much been encouraging for a while. Slaanesh really likes cavalry. If you have a cavalry unit, you probably want to pledge it to Slaanesh. So that's, again, this is perfectly reasonable because cavalry wants to charge. The Eroding Icon pledges you to Nurgle, and this one is actually pretty interesting because it makes it so you can't score crits against your unit. Now, you might be thinking that doesn't sound like a ton, but it is depending on the army, because a lot of armies out there, they really can't. A lot of them do rely on their crits. Like off the top of my head, like Nighthawk, like their Frightful Touch is all about just getting their Frightful Touch from their sixes. So they really would not like having their crits shut off, or any unit that scores mortal wounds on crits. Well, that just gets shut off. So this can be really good on a tar pit unit, because it can really shut down a lot of mortal wound shenanigans that things like Chaos Warriors don't like. Because another thing that don't forget, this isn't the past anymore. Chaos Warriors don't get their ward against mortals, so anything that shuts down mortals is good for them. And the final one is Blasted Standard, and this pledges you to Tzeentch. This basically just gives the unit a 4+ ward against shooting attacks. A little more, definitely more niche than the other ones. But if you're going up against you're going up against a shooting army, You know, this can be perfectly viable. You know, like, you know, there's still a lot of good shooting out there. You know, there's you know, got those Kurnoth hunters with their bows. You know, you still got your Lumineth Realm Lords with their bows. You got the Karajan Overlords with their shooting in mass. You know, Cities of Sigmar can really dish out the shooting. Like, this is not nothing. But again, it's matchup dependent, because again, if you're going up against an army that has virtually no shooting, like Iron Jaws, like what are you even doing? Like, you know, like, and again, that would be on you, because this is a choice you take even probably before you know who your opponent is. Well, you know, sorry, I mean, I guess if you're going to a tournament, you can't always tailor, but you know, I'm just saying, out of all of them, Tzeentch is definitely the more matchup dependent. So overall, what do I think of the battle traits? Well, as I said, they're much more different than before. We've definitely gained some flexibility in a lot of ways, but we've also, you know, lost a lot of our variety. Like, you know, yeah, all those cool abilities from the Eye of the Gods, those are gone. You know, like, you know, in return, however, it just gets easier to get off. You know. I don't know if I don't think it was a good idea making it only ever apply to one specific hero, because again, you're just basically just screaming to kill that hero and never get this off. And not saying that that's necessarily a game changer, because again, the most you're ever going to get out of this is just giving your hero, you know, a heal plus a ward, or turning him into a demon prince. But still, you know, that I just feel maybe if they were going to, if your rewards for doing this were going to be so much more limited, I just don't see why we couldn't have just applied it to all the heroes, because I don't see this as any more game breaking as the old one, and the old one just lets you do it with any hero, or even unit. So, I don't know. Maybe they did this for, like, maybe did this ease on bookkeeping, or maybe it was done for balance reasons. I'd probably say it's probably more the former, because I know some people didn't like having to keep track all the time on what unit got what upgrade, and, you know, like, you know, trying to bank on getting specific ones, but didn't because it was random. You know, I get maybe that was the reason, but still, I don't think they should have just made it so restrictive in that regard. And on top of that too, now, as for the pledging system, I don't really see too much of a difference with them. The only significant impact I'm seeing is that, again, they've really cut down on, you know, cross-pollinations with, you know, the different Slaves of Darkness units. Like, you'll have to get used to just Slaves of Darkness units only being used in their specific book outside of Regiments of Renown, which is fine with me, because I never did that, and I don't know anyone who did that, but I know some people did, and even back then they didn't like it. So, you know, I mean, by that I mean, you know, losing, you know, their, you know, Hedon Knights of Slaanesh Slaves of Darkness army. So, you know, it is what it is. GW wants the books to be more unique to themselves. So I guess that's just how it's going to be. Now, as for the actual buffs themselves, definitely, as I said, definitely much better than they were before. But again, I'm not sure how I feel in this. I have mixed reactions to only doing one unit at a time, because again, that means depending on how many rounds you're playing, you'll never get more than maybe 2 to 3 off at any given time in a game, realistically. So you have more flexibility, but you have to be more careful. You have to really put more thought into what unit is going to get it when, and what you're going to do, because again, you're only going to get one chance in a game to get it off, and you don't want to pick the wrong one. So at the same time, it definitely gives you more flexibility, but it also creates a much more of a strategic aspect to it. Like, you need to know, like I said, you need to know what unit you feel is going to survive, and also when to get it off. Because let's say, okay, maybe you panic and think, okay, well, this unit's about to get charged next turn, so I'll just pop off Pledge to Slaanesh. Pledge to Nurgle. So now they won't get hit with crits. And you know, and sorry, not with crits, but now they'll get a ward save. Now that might seem pretty good, but then they don't get charged, and now all of a sudden now that unit's now stuck with Nurgle, and maybe they'll never get into combat the whole game. So, you know, you definitely got to know, you definitely have to plan your timing more than before. And also I will also say too, I do think they did a good job in like how they devised how your hero will gain points. Like, it's definitely much easier than before, you know, just fighting in any capacity and just contesting a foreign objective. Those are very easy to get off. But again, it had to be, because remember, it's just one hero. So, you know, they're really making it easy to rack up the points because, again, they have to, because that hero probably won't survive the whole game. So, you know, they give with one hand and take with another. So, I don't know. I think we need to play test this more, because I don't want to just write this off as that it's bad, but I think it's just you're just putting too much incentive to kill a hero that probably already has a lot of incentive to be killed, you know? So, yeah, I'm going to say I have mixed feelings on the battle traits. Again, and another thing that I will point out too is, one thing that I don't particularly like too is, this isn't going to change how armies play in general. Like basically, if you have an army that you played from 2nd to 3rd and then 3rd into 4th, nothing will really change for you. Like, the battle traits aren't going to really change up how armies play and what you're incentivized to bring. So if you're incentivized to bring like 20-man squad of Chaos Warriors, nothing in this is going to change your opinion on that. So, because I was kind of hoping maybe that, you know, this might encourage like some more unique armies to come in the 4th edition, but no, I think we're just basically just going to see more of the same. The heroic traits I'm not going to talk about much, because they haven't really changed all that much, except kind of just for one. So, yeah, the big one I think is favored by the Pantheon. It just gives 3 Dark Apotheosis points at the beginning of the game. So, you know, basically the hero you chose just starts off with 3 automatically. So, yeah, I guess that could be a good one if you're banking to, you know, to try and get a Demon Prince, but, you know, it's whatever. The Deathmonger, it lets you fight twice in a single phase, once per battle, but strike lasts for the 2nd time. Again, if you have a Hero Hammer selection, that could have some use. Probably not going to be game breaking, but it's okay. And the last one is, you know, is Radiance of Dark Glory, where you just roll a dice for each damage friendly unit within 12, and heal 1 and heal 3 on a 3+. It's okay. Like, again, like I said, I have a thing. It's a once per game. It's not a once per game, but it's it's one of those things where you have to roll off, and, you know, and maybe it might not go off, and, you know, 3+ can be tricky. Yeah, I don't know. I think the hero traits are fine. They're not groundbreaking. It's not really, I don't really have much else to say on them, really. Again, to Artifacts of Power, I feel like I don't really think they're going to be too game breaking either. And like, again, they're kind of similar. Some of them are pretty similar to the old book, but I'll go over them briefly. You know, the Infernal Puppet still around. You know, you pick a wizard within 24, and, you know, you can cause it to take mortal damage. You know, every time, you know, they use a spell. That could be cute, but again, that's matchup specific. The Conqueror's Crown subtracts 5 from the control score of enemy infantry while they're in combat with the wearer. That one, I think, could have some use, especially on like a monster hero. You know, because, you know, it's subtracting some from the control score from like a large tar pit blob can have some use. Again, not groundbreaking, but still could be good. Now, the Realm Wrapper's Twist Rune, this one is once per battle, and honestly, this one is the one I think is gimmicky as heck, but maybe you might see it. So you basically just give a terrain feature obscuring, and if they don't have, and also all the units, friendly and foe, can take a mortal wound when you do it. Okay, great. Like, realistically, it basically just exists to give a terrain piece obscuring, which I guess can have some edge use cases, but again, I outside of just having like a fun game, I don't really see people ever taking this. Like, realistically, I think probably the Conqueror's Crown has the most broad use, because again, the other one is basically a gimmick, and the other one is matchup specific. So, yeah, they are what they are. You're gonna take an artifact. These are what you're gonna pick. So pick the one you feel is best. The artifacts, again, I don't really think they've really gotten better or worse from the last time, because Slaves of Darkness, in my opinion, has never had great artifacts. So nothing's changed here. Once again, yeah, the spell lore is not too drastically game impactingly different than they were before. You still got your demonic speed, for that 3d6 charge. Now that I think about it, Slaves of Darkness really like their 3d6 charge. Anyway, you still got your spiked tongue curse. It's that really damaging unlimited spell where you can just spam mortal wounds, but it could hurt you if you don't do it right. And you got your binding damnation. If we can get them strike last. Honestly, I'm not going to talk too much about these, because again, I don't think they've really changed all that much. But I will say, though, of all the enhancements, the spell lore, in my opinion, are by far, I think, the best. Because all three of these, in my opinion, are honestly pretty good. Spike Dunk Curse is a very nice unlimited spell. Sure, you can damage yourself as long as you get everything off. You definitely spam some good mortal damage. Binding Damnation. Strike last on a unit is always good. There's endless use cases for that. And of course, Demonic Speed is just good. So so that way you could get like one unit. You could give the banner, the Slanesh banner, to get them 3d6, and then put this on another unit for another 3d6 charge. You could get like just mass cavalry or mass hammer units just snaking up the board just at max speed. Like, that's always good. So again, when it comes to enhancements, spell lore is still king in Slaves of Darkness. That was true last edition. It's true this edition. You got nothing will let you down here, in my opinion. So overall thoughts, again, in terms of enhancements, not a lot has really changed. They're for the most part, they're fine, but nothing spectacular. Honestly, my honest opinion is I actually assumed that they were actually going to change them up more, because some people were saying that a lot of the enhancements I find in the last edition were they were too okay. They wanted a little bit more variety. And I guess they didn't really do that. I don't know. I guess GW just liked where they were. Artifacts are still kind of a mixed bag. That hasn't changed, so it's just something that's going to have to be dealt with. Excuse me. Again, but I'm not saying they don't have their use, but again, they're, like I said, the majority of your artifacts are kind of only have like edge use cases or a niche, so you definitely don't want to rely on them. Excuse me. In addition to that, the spells, however, definitely make up for any shortcomings anywhere else. Like, again, I'm a firm believer that Slaves of Darkness has some of the best magic in the game. And just in terms of what it allows you to do. Now, while I do feel that certain other armies, let's say like Lumineth Realm Lords and Disciples of Tzeentch, have better offensive spells for like dealing damage and stuff, but I feel like Slaves of Darkness just have the most variety and the right balance of spells in that variety, in that they have damage, they have enhancements, they have really good tricksy stuff. Like, it's just a good balanced spells between your spell lore and the spells just on the Warscrolls. Like, Slaves of Darkness just really just hits that right balance that so many armies just don't do. So anyway, yeah, I would say if I really had to decide, I'd say it's fine, because again, there's not really a ton of nothing's really changed much in enhancement department. So by that I mean in terms of how it's going to affect the army. Like I said, like the battle traits are definitely going to affect how you play in a lot of cases, at least more so than they did, at least more so than it was last edition. But enhancements are just enhancements. They're free, take them. But again, you're going to probably be relying more on your War Scroll abilities than anything enhancements are going to give you. Okay, so battle formations. Battle formations are battle formations. I don't really think you're going to be building your army too much around them. They're just a free ability that you're going to utilize throughout the army. So again, I'm going to go through them briefly. So there's Legions of Chaos. So while you have one Warrior Chaos hero and one Dark Oath or Demon hero on the battlefield, by demon that probably means that the only one I think you really have is your Demon Prince, I think. So that's probably what it meant. It basically just gives 2 to the control score of friendly Slaves of Darkness units contesting objectives wholly outside your territory. That's fine. That's fine. Again, nothing particularly groundbreaking because, while adding objective score is always nice, well, you know what's better? Just wiping out your opponent contesting the objectives. I think that's usually better 9 out of 10 times. And I think that's what most Slaves of Darkness players would prefer to do. But, that's just me. Again, and also, and the other big thing is it requires at least 2 heroes remaining on the board, which is fine, but again, it's all like what happens if you keep your Warrior of Chaos hero, but you lose your Dark Oath or Demon hero. Then all of a sudden you don't have this anymore. So again, this one I don't particularly think is that good because for particular reason, there's too many hoops to jump through, and I just don't feel the control score in and of itself thing is by itself is necessary. But it's not. I'm not saying it's bad. I just feel like you probably I would have maybe preferred maybe upping damage in some respect, which the next one does. The God's Wrath Warband basically allows you to pick a contested objective by a friendly unit, and it becomes defiled. And then what you allows you to do is at the end of the turn, you get to roll a d3 for each enemy unit within with all contesting a defiled objective, and on a 2+, deal that amount of mortal damage. That's perfectly fine. I find, it's more damage. It can deter an opponent from going near an objective, and it's just more free. It's just more free damage on the table. It's simple, easy to remember, and can have some uses. Yeah, that one's okay. Spoilers, again, this one I feel like, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's probably just going to be more for, like, gimmick lists. So, for example, it just basically allows a friendly non-hero monster or beast unit to fight immediately after a Demon Prince does, and they also get a Dover bonus, like just a +1 to wound, I think. But, again, this is fine, but... again, the problem that it does with this is that the Slaves of Darkness, as anyone who probably played them would know, their beasts and their non-hero monsters aren't exactly the most competitive thing in the world. And on top of that, again, it requires you to keep your Demon Prince alive for this to even work at all. So again, I think this is not really going to be more the competitive choice. This is going to be more like the fun choice. Like, for example, I would do something like this. Like one army design for Slaves of Darkness that I love is like bringing a crazy Hellspawn army. And by that I mean, okay, like, bring a bunch of Demon Princes, bring a bunch of beasts, bring a bunch of monsters, make a whole Cthulhu monster list with, like, tons of, like, Raptorixes and Chaos Spawn and lots of Slaughter Brutes, just because it looks cool on the table. Like, that's the kind of thing I would like to see. Now, is that competitive? Heck no, probably not. But still, it would be fun to look at. And then the last one is the Dark Oath Horde. It's basically just your standard, your unit dies, bring back half of them if a hero's still alive, blah, blah, blah. The biggest thing for this, however, is that it allows you to bring it with just over 3 inches away from an enemy unit as long as it's only within 6 inches of the battle line edge. That could have some, edge use cases, like, just cheekily grabbing an objective, etc. But the only problem I have with this is it's because it revolves around Dark Oath. And Dark Oath, from what the looks of it, they're really just not the most intimidating things in the world. Now if this had been a thing for like Chaos Warriors, that'd be a different story. But I don't think you're really gonna get a ton of mileage bringing back a half units of a half strength unit of Dark Oath Savagers, or like Dark Oath Cavalry. It's just I just don't feel it's really going to make as much of a difference as you might think, because again, I don't think Dark Oath are really the most competitive thing in the book. But hey, if you want to go for a themed army, this is perfectly viable. There's nothing wrong with it in that regard. So just to summarize battle formations, again, Legion of Chaos. If you're going to go with this, definitely I would say you want to go more heavy infantry, because again, if you're going to be focusing your army around the concept of control score, you want to pick units that definitely are going to last long enough for that to even matter. So if you're going for, let's say, like an army where it's just bringing like max squads of Chaos Warriors and Chaos Chosen and Varangard, well then yeah, then that would probably that could definitely be good, especially if you're being offensive about it. But again, if you're going for like a lot of light infantry and stuff like that, then not so much, because again, just making them have a higher control score won't matter much when your units are dying left, right, and center. Again, I really just wish it had been more of an offensive buff, but again, can't change the world. And again, it's very much gimped by needing at least 2 heroes on the table. So again, that's another strike against it. The God's Wrath Warband, again, I think it definitely, I feel it's probably, in my opinion, my favorite, just for the fact that it's simple, it's not too crazy, it's relatively easy to get off, and it just adds more damage. So this one, I could definitely see being used a little more than the others, but again, that's just my theory. I could definitely be wrong. Again, Despoiler screams a fun list. Again, if you just want to bring a bunch of scary looking monsters and beasts and demon princes, go nuts, because it just for the sheer sake it would look really cool. Oh, sorry, and just to clarify, no, it's just the ability just gives you attack after a demon prince. There's no other buff. Sorry for saying that. Yeah, like this is the kind of stuff I would just like to see from a visual perspective. But again, I don't know if I probably wouldn't bring this to a tournament. But hey, if you're braver than me, go for it. And again, the Dark Oath Horde one is okay. Again, I mean, if you want to go Dark Oath heavy, this is definitely the one to go with. But again, the only real thing I could see definitely going from it is the fact that you could bring it along a board edge. And there's not as much restrictions about bringing it close to other units, so you definitely could get some movement shenanigans with them. But again, Dark Oath just is definitely in and of itself is lacking when it comes to proper durability and also damage output. So if you're going with this one, I would definitely recommend at least bring some hammer and anvil units along with your Dark Oath. Because otherwise, you're definitely going to be playing on hard mode, in my honest opinion. Unless you're bringing like an infinite amount of them, like you're just max score. You're bringing just dozens upon dozens of models. But even then, I don't even know how competitive that is. So it is what it is. So now the Warscrolls. Well, first thing to get out of the way real quickly, there really isn't any new Warscrolls in the book. Actually, at least not with this Battletome coming out. In fact, we actually lost more units than we gained. So we lost the Soul Grinder, we lost the War Shrine, we lost both versions of the Mana Core. And a lot of people were saying to me they weren't surprised and were actually glad the Soul Grinder was gone. Okay, I guess I was the one person in the universe who actually liked the Soul Grinder and Slaves of Darkness because, well, I guess I just kind of liked the idea of, there being, just one more long range artillery piece that could also fight. But I guess it is just what it is. I guess the main, though I do understand the complaint that they didn't thematically align with the army. I don't know if I agree with that, because Age of Sigmar definitely has more advanced cyber and steampunk machines in it. So I don't really see why the Soul Grinder couldn't have been it. But I guess some people think it belongs more in 40K. So okay, great. Well, everyone's getting what they want. It's going the way of, it's going to 40K. It's gone. The War Shrine, however, people are a lot more upset about, and I do understand, because it was a great buff piece and a centerpiece model. Not sure why they did it. Maybe they thought the model was too old. I don't know. but I think it could have stayed. I don't really see a good reason for removing it. Now the Manticores, however, oh my, yeah, no, they had to go. Like now that we saw we saw Talia Vedra in City of Sigmar with her Manticore, and now comparing that Manticore to these Manticores, it just was painful to look at. Like, oh geez, just get, like, I was like, geez, get that out of my face. Like, no, those models were way too old. Just shove them into Old World and just get them out of here. Yeah. So anyway, like I said, overall they're a little bit of a mixed bag, and I'll just go more into detail. So some stuff I liked. Well, I do feel that GW is really getting on to what the theme of the Slaves to Darkness is in these particular armies, and by that I mean is that we finally know where broadly the factions lie. Like, you know, so basically in Slaves to Darkness, there's basically 3 broad factions. There's the forces loyal to Archaon, there's the forces loyal to Be'lakor, and there's the Dark Oath. So, like, basically, yeah, like, there's a lot more, there's definitely a lot of units in the book that are meant to function more with Be'lakor, you know, like his Chaos Legionaries, the Centurion Marshal, and then, you know, like, with Archaon, you know, there's definitely the two, like, lieutenants for them, you know, Archaon's got Abraxia, Bellacor's got Eternus, and they both, you know, they both have ways to mesh with each other more, like, Abraxia works better with Varangard. I feel like they're doing a good job of giving a lot of, like, army themed designs with the Warscrolls, and also making the Warscrolls work together with, like, certain abilities that, you know, that go together in that regard. So I like that. And also, I definitely like, they also did a good job of keeping the older combat themes as relevant. So, like, what I mean by that is that if you have an army that worked that worked well within the army in 3rd edition, chances are it's going to work here, you know. So if your big brick of, like, you know, bunch of Chaos Warriors with your hammer units, like your Chaos Knights and your Chosen, if you felt it worked well then, it'll still work well now. There's not been a significant change, I feel, to their War Scroll abilities that will really impact them. They're all good. In fact, I actually think some of them got a little bit better. I feel that Chaos Knights got better. I feel Chosen are just as good, if not better, as they were before. Chaos Warriors, yeah, there's just no change with them. Like, I feel like any changes that were made were just to better bring them into the 4th edition rule set rather than drastically changing what their roles are in the army. So in that regard, I think they did a good job. Also, this is also one of the... this is also, I just want to point out, this is also the first time so far that an army is allowing you to bring units from other books in this book without requiring a Regiment of Renown. By that I mean is, I'll explain that more later, but it has to do with how their army of Renown works. That I actually do like, because I feel like that's something that I think they should do more going forward, because I feel like the Army of Renown, the whole point of them is to allow players to have more variety, to just craft their armies and get new, like, different sets of rule sets. But I think by if they do it this way, I think this will allow them to pull more units from other armies without you know, having to balance them against the main army abilities, if that makes sense. Sorry, I'll explain it more when we get to the Army of Renown, but it's just something I want them to do more of. And again, my theory also too, why we didn't get too much, is GW has definitely been going on to the idea of tackling bloat. Like, we saw this especially more with Stormcast, but we also saw it a little bit with Skaven too. They're less afraid than they were in the past of just cutting units out, and Slaves of Darkness are no different. Like, again, if you actually look it up, this book, you are going into this book with less units than you ever did in all the other books, because not only now did you lose all your cultists, you also lost 4 more units going into this than you had in the index. So not only did you lose your cultists, now from the index to here, you lost 4 more units. So this is probably the smallest that the Slaves of Darkness have been in terms of War Scroll numbers in years. So whether you think that's a good or a bad thing will probably depend on where you sit on the fence of GW calling this many models all at once. Again, I'm not going to tackle that here because that's a more nuanced discussion. Now, what do I think could have been better? Well, while I did say it was a good thing that people don't have to worry about their armies being changed up, I do feel that can also be a con in that, again, you're not really gaining much either. Like, for example, I kind of feel that whenever you update a Battletome, there should be maybe like an incentive, I feel, to change things up a bit or do something different. And maybe GW thought they were doing that with this new book. But I just kind of feel that we're, like, in the grand scheme of things, we're just going to see more of the same. We're, like, sure, they're giving more ways than ever to play Dark Oath, but I do feel that besides objective grabbers, we're only ever going to see, like, just, big, heavily armored units backed up by heavy cavalry. Like, I would have maybe liked to see them maybe actually encourage you to bring a beast and monster heavy army. Again, they did nothing. Nothing with the Warscrolls changed enough to warrant that. Like, all your beasts and all your monsters that aren't heroes, they were kind of mediocre before. They're a little mediocre now. I mean, I'm not saying they're necessarily bad, but, like, okay, why am I bringing a Fomoroid Crusher instead of Varangard? Why am I bringing a Spearings instead of more Chaos Knights? Why am I bringing a Slaughter Brute instead of, Chosen or Chaos Warriors? Like, again, there's just not enough, they just don't compete enough. At least not to the extent that I want. And again, I do feel that they actually lost some flexibility in that they've lost a couple of units and also some support pieces recently that really added some flexibility. I didn't like the Mana Cores because the way they looked, but at least they were flying units. So the army just lost 2 flying monsters, who are heroes, by the way, which can be a big blow to mobility. And on top of that, they lost both their buffing centerpiece model in the Chaos War Shrine, and also they lost their main artillery monster in the Soul Grinder. And even if you didn't like those units, you can't admit that those units didn't get anything to replace them. So basically, they only lost stuff with those units being removed, and they gained nothing. I don't particularly like that. And also on top of that, I feel that, again, Dark Oath, I think they need to do better with them. I know they definitely have their use, and I'm sure people can make them work better. But at the end of the day, depending on what their points are, I just don't really see Dark Oath armies becoming a thing. I feel like you'll see them, in mixed army lists. But you're not, like, no matter how much GW seems to want to push the idea of a Dark Oath army being, like, semi-viable, I just don't really see it. Like, they're too fragile. They're not going to do enough damage. Even the better aspects of their abilities require you to get something off. Like, I need to, like, what if you never roll an 8-inch charge for your Dark Oath infantry? You're never going to get that extra rend, just... Again, it's just, again, it's the same problem with the monsters and the beasts. Like, I just don't feel they compete with the rest of the army enough to warrant an entire army of them. So, again, it's something I just hope they fix up down the line. That's all I'm going to say. Now, the Regents of Renown. These are not bad. The Lord Scalador's Chosen, that's basically just how you're going to be sharing your Chaos Warriors and your Chaos Knights around with the other Mono God armies. Again, though, but remember, again, you're basically just going to rely on this Regiment of Renown's ability because you can't get their keywords anymore. The Chosen one is fine. It just gives you, like, bonuses to, like, defense and offense depending on what type of objective you're contesting. It's fine. And the Guard Mark Ascendant one, that one is just basically going to be... It's basically just going to be how the Mono God specific armies are going to get their Demon Princes back. Like, it's literally all it does. It just gives you 1 Demon Prince, and what it does is it allows you to give that Demon Prince all the keywords necessary to interact with that army's abilities, and it also gives them a special ability depending on which one you took them in. And if that sounds familiar, yes, I will confirm. This is literally just the old... Demon Prince abilities from 3rd edition, where, if you took him Khorne, you got +1 attack, or if you took Slaanesh, you got +1 to run and charge, blah, 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 stuff like that. And it also got all the proper keywords to interact with let's say, like, Blades of Khorne or Heat of Slaanesh battle traits. So basically, it just took what they did was they just took all those War Scroll abilities and they just put it into a Regiment of Renowned. So, you know, I guess it's a way to do it. I kind of feel like, okay, if you were literally just going to make them the same, why didn't you just keep them on the War Scroll and just, you know, just let people have the Demon Prince not needing a Regiment of Renowned? You know, it just feels like you're giving us the same thing with extra steps, but whatever, it's what it is. Personally, you'll probably see both of these in armies, because again, people will want to get their Chaos Warriors back just to have a good tar pit, and excuse me, and people will probably want to be, if you already have a Demon Prince in, let's say, like a Megakin of Nurgle army, you'll probably just want to take this so you don't have to, you know, put that model on the shelf. You can still use it. So again, like I said, they're fine. You'll probably see them. So yeah. So my thoughts overall. Well, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it's not as different as I was expecting, and it didn't and the things that changed, they weren't in the ways that I was expecting. Again, I was expecting this army was going to lean more heavily into Undivided this edition, but no, they're actually leaning more into the whole idea of pledging to one of the gods. Oh, and before I forget, you probably would ask me, yes, I did take a look at their faction terrain piece. It's fine. Again, it doesn't really do much different than whatever it does before. If you liked it before, you'll like it now. If you hate it then, you'll hate it now. But it's free, so take it anyway. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on the terrain piece. It's free. If you have it, take it. There's no reason not to. Anyways, overall, I think the army definitely is still as flexible as it was before. Still has some of the best spells in the game. Still has plenty of unit variety. Still has some of the best armored infantry. Still has some of the best named heroes in the game. In fact, I think they actually might have gotten better this edition. We'll see. But however, I do have some issues with how they changed the battle traits. I feel like while I really love some changes they made, like to flexibility, there's also other things that they made changes to that I don't particularly like. And also, I don't feel that they did anything drastic to change how the army performs on the tabletop. Like, obviously, there's going to be new ways to run the army, and you'll have to run it new ways. But I feel like if your army was struggling in a current meta last edition, I don't think it's going to change too drastically now, beyond the fact they were in a new edition. By that I mean is that I don't think their power level has really gone up or down in any capacities. I think they're basically where they were before. Because a lot of the stuff they could do in the last book, they can do now, but either differently or with extra steps. So I feel like they're different, but not fundamentally changed, if that makes sense. So we're just going to have to see how they perform on the tabletop, but I really hope that people ultimately find new ways of running them too, that it doesn't just involve just running like a wall of iron. Because I feel that too often that's not so much that I feel like that's the only way to run them, that's just what's encouraged by the book itself. So we'll see how that changes, and one day, someday, hopefully, I hope they find a way to make non-hero monsters and beasts work, because they're honestly some of my favorite models in this book, and I just feel the book is just not encouraging their play enough, and I really wish that would change, but we'll see what happens. So anyway, yeah, ultimately, yeah, it's a good, solid book. I think it's going to do fine, because Slaves of Darkness were doing fine before, I feel, and I think they'll still do fine again. Having said that, there are some subtle changes that drastically change how the army works, so please read carefully, because even I missed some stuff. Like, for example, the whole only one hero can be Eye of the God. I missed that initially, so please be careful, pay attention to what the little nuance in the rules that have changed. That's just my personal advice. But anyway, yeah, that pretty much sums up what I have to say. If you like Slaves of Darkness, you'll still like them, and if you want to get into them, yeah, go for it. They're a perfectly viable army. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's getting a little long, but I'm wrapping up now. So I hope you're having a great day, and happy gaming. Cheers.